been watching now. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Columbia Memorial Space Museum trip, virtual trip. Uh, we're hoping that you're having a good morning, and we're gonna welcome Mr. Ben Dicko. He is the president of the Columbia Memorial Space Center Museum, and it's a museum where it's hands-on learning center, and it's located right in Downey, and that's a place where spaceships that went to the moon and all the space shuttles were designed and built. So now I'm going to introduce Mr. Bendico, and let's pay attention, and hopefully we'll be able to watch the videos and everything else. All right, so sir, welcome
Okay.
aboard Learning Center.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning. It's nice to see all of you and talk to you this morning. Sounds like you've had quite a great summer, that you've been getting visits from all kinds of different museums and the zoo and places like that, Natural History Museum. I'm super honored to be here with you today. I think this might be the last day of summer, so it's nice to be the final person here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to continue your investigation in light and shadow. I know that for a couple of weeks you've been working with Eli at the Natural History Museum to talk about shadows and how he uses shadows for puppets. Well, I wanted to talk about how light and shadows influences things we see in the night sky in space. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the Space Center and about who I am. Let me just share my screen for a minute, get this thing going. All right. So that is the Columbia Memorial Space Center. That is where I work. It's a great, fantastic place. We're right there in Downey, California, just a little bit south of probably where all of you are. But of course, we've been closed since March, just like your school's been closed. So I'm talking to you from my house. But when I go into the office, this is the place where I go at the Space Center. We have 2 floors of interactive exhibits. We have a real spacesuit. We have a robotics lab where you can go in and build and program a robot. We've got all kinds of hands-on things. We do activities. We do programs all over LA, and we do big events that we'll probably tell you about later on once we're doing that stuff. And here we even have a space capsule outside of the building. We do a bunch of stuff outside of the building in the parks and things like that. And then who am I? Oh, wait, why are we there? That's a better question. So this is an Apollo spacecraft. This is the spacecraft that took astronauts to the moon. And all of these spaceships were designed and built at where the Space Center is back 50 years ago in Downey. And then after that, we designed and built all of these, all the space shuttles. Every single space shuttle that's out there was designed and built right there in LA, basically. So this is me. I'm a big fan of space. This is me back in 8th grade, maybe freshman year of high school. I went to space camp. So I've been into this for a really long time. And I hope that some of you are really into space and that maybe get inspired by what we're going to talk about today. This is who inspired me, this guy, Carl Sagan. He did a great show called Cosmos, all about space, that I loved when I was a kid. I also absolutely love this movie. This is Star Wars, of course. And all I wanted to do was fly an X-Wing, travel into space, be an astronaut. But I also loved this place when I was a kid. I grew up in Chicago, and this is the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. So this is a museum that has like a huge airplane in it and in trains. It has a model of a space shuttle. It's a huge building. It's a really big place. And that's where I used to hang out all the time when I was a kid. I loved the Science Museum, and I'm so excited to be able to lead a science museum now. So who inspires you? That's a question I want to ask you guys to think about a little bit. Who inspires you to either be an astronaut or be in space or be an artist or be whatever you want to be? Maybe this program this summer has inspired you to do something, but I hope that there are other people that can inspire you too, some of your teachers. All right, like I said, we're going to talk about how light and shadow, which you guys have been studying, how it influences what we see in the night sky, but really how it influences the moon. So how many of you have all seen this? This is the new moon. This is the moon when it looks kind of how it looks like at the beginning of the month. Or maybe you've seen the moon that looks like this, like a crescent moon. Or maybe you've seen a half moon like this. This is a great picture because you can really see how the light and the shadow work together to give you a picture of what the moon looks like. Now, where's the light coming from? It's coming from the sun, right? So the sun's shining on the moon from the right side here. It's shining on the moon, and it's reflected back to us on Earth so that we can see the shiny side of the moon. But then, of course, the other part of the moon is in shadow because it's not getting the sunlight. This is the moon as it's kind of getting more and more light as the month goes on. And then here's a full moon. How many of you have seen a full moon before? There was a really great one a couple of weeks ago. This is when all the sun's light is shining on the face of the moon, and all that light bounces back to us, back on Earth. Now, the shadow part of the moon is on the other side, which we can't see. So we only see the light part during a full moon. Now, I know maybe some of this might be a little confusing right now. And again, I know that Eli at the Natural History Museum worked with lights and shadows and kind of showed you some of that. So I want to show you a video that I put together with a little helper to kind of give you a better idea about what's happening with the moon and the sun and the earth and these lights and shadows. Okay. Now it's going to get a little loud at the beginning. We have a little teaser that shows you a little bit of something about the Space Center at the beginning, but then we'll get into the explanation of lights and shadows in the moon. It's only about 4 minutes. I hope you enjoy.
Straight up into the sky. What an unbelievable sight. I didn't think anything could match Apollo. By the mid-2030s, I believe we can send humans to orbit, Mars, and return them safely to Earth.
So first thing, Lucy, can you hold up the moon? We're going to pretend that white ball is the moon. Lucy is going to be the Earth, and the lamp is the sun. Now, one thing to remember is that the moon doesn't have its own source of light. The moon just reflects the light from the sun. Okay? Okay. First way we're going to demonstrate this from far away is the Earth, the moon, and the sun all together. Okay, Lucy, hold the moon out, straight like that. Okay. And then the moon's in orbit around the Earth. So Lucy, and when I tell you to, you can turn around, and everybody.
Mr. Ben, can you hear me?
Yes.
You know, we have a question from a student from Eastman Elementary that says, how does the moon give us light?
That's a good question. Do you want me to pause this and address it, or should I just talk over the video?
You can talk over the video because I see
Okay.
that it's seeing the rotation and everything. So
Okay. So the moon doesn't have its own light source. The moon only reflects light back from the sun. So you can see the light in the, it's just like what you're seeing here. The light in the lamp is hitting the side of the white ball, and the white ball reflects the light back. Now, this is what we see beginning of the month when the moon is dark, called the moon. But because all we see is the shadow part, the other half of the moon is pointed towards the sun, it's reflecting sun light back to the sun. So we only see the shadow. As the moon turns around in its orbit around the Earth during the month, suddenly.
Mr. Ben, at this time, there is no sound. We're getting a report that we can't hear a sound.
You can't hear the sound?
No.
Let me turn it up.
As we move around a little bit more of the month, we see
A little bit better.
A little bit better? Good. That's about as high as I can get it.
all the light from the sun is doing what, Lucy? That's right. It's reflecting.
Meanwhile,
So-
let me ask you another question from another student
Yeah.
at Eastman. How do we get gravity on the moon?
Ha, that's a good question. So there's only 1/6 of the gravity on the moon that then we feel here on Earth. But the reason why there's gravity on the moon is that every single thing in the universe has gravity. Everything that has mass, anything that's made of anything else has gravity.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Do you have anything to say about
Gonna wrap this up really fast.
Okay. You want to say goodbye?
All right. So let me stop sharing my, let's see. Oh, thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen and kind of get back to you guys a little bit. I hope you can hear me a little bit better. So that was a little video that I put together with my daughter, Lucy, who's going to be a kindergartner at Mount Washington Elementary School, part of your district, hopefully in another month. Anyway, so that was a little video we put together about how you can see how the moon and the sun and shadows and light work. Sounds like maybe some of you couldn't hear everything really well, but I can explain it if you have a question. There was a question out there though about how the moon has gravity. So let me talk about that really fast. So every single thing in the universe, anything that's made of stuff like us or the books behind me or the earth or the moon has gravity. Gravity is just a property of matter. Anything that is a thing out there has a bit of gravity. Now you and me, our gravity is so tiny that we don't do anything, nothing happens with it. But the earth is so huge that gravity on earth pulls us back down, right? On the moon is only about maybe a third or a quarter of the size of the earth. So it has less gravity because it has less stuff. And in fact, it only has a sixth of the gravity of earth. So if you watch any videos of the astronauts walking on the moon, you can see them kind of jumping around, popping up and down like that because the gravity isn't as strong. When they step, they kind of hop a little bit. Any other questions out there?
Yes, we have a question from Ms. Meirelles' class. It says, why does the moon change shape throughout the school year?
That's a great question. And actually, that's exactly what we were showing in our video before. So the moon changes shape throughout the month. So every month it does the same cycle. It starts really dark. It's called the new moon. And then slowly you start to see the light kind of in little slivers kind of wash across the face of the moon. And then in the middle of the month, you see the big full moon, which is just lit up. And then it starts to wane or less and less light until you go back around until the moon is dark again. And then the following month, you start the whole cycle over again. That's because, like what we were seeing in the video and what I showed on those pictures, the sun is shining light towards the moon, right? And the moon's going around the earth. Now, at certain points, the moon is either between the earth and the sun. So we don't get to see the lit part of the moon because all we see is the dark part, right? And then as the moon turns around a little bit more and the sun's still shining, you start to see parts of the sunlight reflecting off parts of the moon that are facing the sun. And then as you kind of get around to the other side of the earth, when the moon is facing directly the sun, that's when all of the light from the sun is hitting the moon and it reflects off and we can see it in our eyes down on earth. I hope the explanation on the video will make a little bit more sense. And I hope that the audio works a little better, because I think that will show you exactly how those phases or the different ways that the moon looks, how those phases work.
We have Manuel from Brooklyn Avenue that's asking, is there really a rabbit shadow on the moon?
A what channel on the moon?
A rabbit shadow.
A rabbit shadow. Oh, that's a good question. Well, some people think it looks like a rabbit. So it's not a real rabbit, right? But it's the way that a couple of the craters are on the moon. So you guys know what craters are, right? Well, and if you don't, I'll tell you. When asteroids, big pieces of rock, back a long time ago would hit the moon, it would hit the moon and it'd create this sort of circular shape, this sort of dip in the edge of the moon, because it would dent the moon, basically. It would punch a little hole in it.
Ben, excuse my interruption. Can you share your audio with us? I'm getting reports that we can't hear you. Audio, just go to share, or maybe like share the screen. Share your screen.
Sure, I will. I can share screen. Let's see.
And let's see. Hopefully that fixes it. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, let's try it there.
Can you guys hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, they'll let me know.
Okay, good. Okay. So anyway, we were talking about a rabbit shadow on the moon. So so when craters are made on the moon, sometimes you get one big crater and then a couple of little asteroids would hit too and create two little small craters. What happens though is that when the sun is shining on the moon, depending on where the moon is, because the moon turns around too, right? It can create its own little shadows because the ridges of the crater will create a little shadow on the other side of it. Just like the mountains sometimes will create a shadow if the sun is hitting it the right way. So on these few craters on the moon, if the sun hits the ridges of the crater the right way, it'll create a shadow that looks like a rabbit. But there's not a real rabbit on the moon. Nothing lives on the moon. I'm excited to hear other questions. I hope you guys can hear me.
Okay, the next question comes to us from Ms. Funk's class, and it's, is the moon really made out of cheese? Or what is it made out of?
No, the moon is not really made out of cheese. The moon is made out of, well, moon's made out of a lot of things. There's a lot of iron in the moon. There's a lot of different minerals in the moon. The makeup of the moon is pretty close, is very close to some parts of the Earth. A lot of silica or silicon, like sand. On the outside of the moon, though, on the crust of the moon, it's something called regolith. It's like moon soil. And mostly what it is kind of a gray, really powdery kind of substance that's like, that's kind of has a lot of sand and silt in it and things like that. And then, you know, other rocks and things like that. But that's what it's made out of. It's not cheese. There is a little bit of water that people have found on the moon. And some people also think that maybe, you know, 10, 12, 15 years from now, if we ever make it back to the moon, we might actually be able to get some minerals from the moon and bring them down to Earth, like iron or other things we can use. You guys want to look at those pictures of the moon a little bit more? I can go back to that question about why does the moon change? Let's do it. Unless I hear another question. So somebody was asking me about how the moon changes, and I'm going to show you these pictures again. So just so you know, this is kind of the moon during the month, right? And so the sun is kind of down here. The sun is down sort of to the bottom right of the picture that you're seeing. And so it's shining on that part of the moon. And as the moon turns around the Earth a little bit more, you see a little bit more of the moon. You see a little bit more until finally all of the sun is shining on the moon and it's a full moon. Any other questions? Any questions about the Space Center?
Okay, I have a question about the Space Center. How is it, and is it free to get in?
The Space Center is awesome. It's super fantastic. It's free sometimes, but otherwise it'll cost about $5 to get in. But if you go on a field trip, then it's free. Well, it's $3 per kid for a field trip, but for you kids, you never see that $3, so it's free to you. But then we have many days during the year where we are free to everybody, and we're super happy to have you. Unfortunately, we're closed right now, but when we open up again, we'll let you know.
Next question.
Mm-hmm.
Can we touch the space shuttles and the spaceships at the museum?
You can touch the one on the outside. Yeah, absolutely. You can totally touch that one. We have some parts of the space shuttle and some parts of the other spacecraft that we don't really let people touch too much, especially the ones that have really been into deep space for a while. We try to keep those as clean as possible. But yeah, the one on the outside of the Space Center, you can totally touch. That one went up to right to the edge of space. It's pretty cool. Then there are other museums too, where they have spacecraft that mostly you can't touch them, but once in a while, if you know the right person.
And I would suppose it's you, huh? Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
A student from Ms. Martin's class asking, are they allowed to try on any spacesuits that they could try on?
Yeah. You know what? At the Space Center, that spacesuit that you saw in the picture, you may have seen here. I'll go back to my picture of the space center, right there. You see on the top there, there's that spacesuit. That's a real space shuttle spacesuit, and you can touch it and you can get into that and get your picture taken in that thing.
Wow, that sounds very, very nice.
It weighs about 300, actually totally filled up. If it was totally filled up, it would weigh about 800 pounds. But because it goes up into space, it's virtually weightless, so nobody feels it.
Okay. So then I want to thank you,
You
Mr.
got it.
Red, for an awesome journey here through the Space Museum. And we want to thank all the students so that they could get back to their summer school classes. And thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
You got it. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you could hear some of that stuff, but check out the video when you can. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
And I'll be in touch with you, sir.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.